Living in our usual circle, we sometimes do not realize what surrounds us outside our usual perimeter. We often strive for stability, the understandable and the obvious, afraid to go beyond the comfort zone that we consider ideal for ourselves. But true understanding, the progress of the mind and intellect begins only after knowing the unknown, when we are not afraid to take a step forward. Hello everyone, my name is Strange, and I believe that people should know the truth. The following unique information was obtained after hacking into a huge array of data hidden by US Special Services. Our analysts literally fell into a stupor when they received the order to interpret the received data. This may seem like a fantastic story, an invention, but I repeat, everything said below is true. A brief explanation. The following information, stolen by our hackers, was previously obtained by the US Special Services through telepathic contact of a quantum computer enhanced by biotechnologies. This computer has the ability to randomly enter into telepathic contact upon request from the outside. The task for the quantum computer was apparently as follows: to provide a stable mental kinetic connection with any being of the human order that is currently located outside the globe, namely with an abducted human being residing on an alien base and ship. The analyst held printed forms in his hands. There was a lot of work ahead. He and his department had to reformat a lot of data, dialogues, information obtained during the contact of the biocomputer with an unknown person, who apparently was captured by aliens. In fact, more than 360 hours of transcribed audio recordings have been received. The beginning was made. Interpretation number 1. Dialogue.
Telepathic contact is currently being provided with you. Your location, condition, can you keep in touch?
Who's here? I can't see anything. Get out of my head. No need.
Don't resist. Stop resisting. Let your thoughts flow freely.
No, please, I'm scared. Let me out. I don't want to.
Next, a stimulation protocol will be conducted. Reading thought forms.
The dialogue was interrupted by a cry of pain from the contact person. My head exploded with a million pieces of pain. I heard hissing, barely perceptible words right in my brain which tried to make me think calmly, observe and transmit visual data. As I understand it, all that I see at the moment, I couldn't resist it. The voice was getting louder. It filled my mind, forced me to obey. Suddenly the voice stopped. It was like a blow to the brain. Silence. Where am I? I understand nothing. I only remember a flash of light at the very moment when I was returning from work in my car. At some point I thought I was in an accident. The body was caught up in sparkling flashes of light, the feeling of a whirlpool that takes you not down but up and as if to the side. I was suffocating and falling apart. Now I can even say that I remember myself hovering over the globe in space. This is an incredible euphoria and fear, a grandiose feeling of freedom and horror that swept through my mind in a few moments. I woke up. The darkness was dispelled by a bluish light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I'm lying down? No. I'm standing, but I can't move. I'm being held down by some kind of force fields. I don't feel handcuffs, restraints, or any other kind of fixation. I can move my wrist slightly, but as soon as I lift my palm off the surface, it returns to its original position by some force. There is chills and lack of sensitivity in the body. I clenched my fist with an effort and dug my nails into the flesh of my palm. There was no pain. There were no feelings at all. There were several creatures standing in front of me. Their bodies were more people than someone, but the bodies were hidden by a protective shell covering the entire surface. I looked at one of the creatures. Oh my lord, they were giants, no less than 3, maybe 4 meters in height. The faces were hidden under the hemispheres. These were people who were not familiar to my eyes and understanding, and I was scared. They just looked at me. One of the creatures ran his hand over his shoulder. No. Not words, but images crept into my head. A whole series of images associated with these creatures. I saw myself naked and lifted up in the space of a metal camera. Maybe it wasn't metal but white plastic. Cables with sensors at the ends were pulled out of the walls towards me under the influence of unknown forces. They touched me, pressed against me, entangled me. I didn't remember it, but it happened to me. Suddenly, a voice was heard distorting the words in my native language.
We take parts of your torso.
I didn't understand and asked again.
My torso?
The voice has improved.
Bodies, glands. You are not in danger of anything dangerous. Soon you will be in the time of your life.
I couldn't move. When I said the words with my mouth, they were misunderstood.
Don't talk. Think. We do it so that you have no fear.
I really wasn't afraid. I communicated with these creatures on equal terms. And most importantly, I felt safe. But suddenly the unexpected happened. There was a knock, a crack. I was shaken along with the panel by the impact. The creatures that stood in front of me turned their backs to me as if on command. They obeyed a certain discipline and acted as if they were all at the same time. One of them, in black protective clothing, ran up to the wall. A light came on in front of him, into which he plunged his hands. The other two also ran up to the opposite walls and did the same. The fourth one held out his hand in front of me. His palm was in front of me. The palm is at least half a meter in size. At that moment I thought I was finished, but the voice rang in my head again. At first their voices did not express any emotions. They confidently entered the mind, transmitted information, but now it seemed to me that the voice was worried.
You're going to sleep.
I immediately fell into a dream, just a black void in which I was not aware of myself and did not dream. I do not know how many hours later I woke up. The dream seemed like a moment to me. I was not fixed to the panel where I woke up. I was lying on the floor. It was very cold. Bluish light still filled the room, but it was empty. It was difficult for me to get up. I couldn't feel my body. It feels like my legs and arms have been laid out. In principle, it could have been chills from the cold, or the consequences of the impact that was exerted on me. Slowly, I rolled over on my stomach, pulled up my arms, and got on all fours. But I could not stand up steadily. I fell back on my stomach and forward, hitting my face. The pain echoed inside with a slight dull echo. I pulled my hand up to my face blood, a little. I must have split my lip. Definitely not the nose. There is too little blood. It was only when I touched my lip that I realized I could barely hear anything. There was no sound at all. None. I touched my ears and there was no blood. Most likely my hearing will recover. I was hoping for it. The room seemed solid, without doors or any other kind of exits. I looked around. The feeling of my own body was slowly returning. There were flashes in his eyes, at first light, like sparks, and then a few dark ones. At that moment, I still did not realize the full extent of what had happened. In fact, I was on an alien ship, who, for some reason of their own, brought me here. They promised me a return, but something happened that was freelance, creepy, dangerous for me too.
Hey, is anyone here?
I didn't recognize my voice. It sounded muffled and quiet, as if plugs had been inserted into my ears. I just screamed.
Hey!
The voice was muffled.
It's like my ears are stuck.
I put my hand over my nose and exhaled. Once again and again, making a purge. My hearing seemed to get a little better, but there was silence and emptiness all around. The bluish light began to change to red. Light at first, but richer and richer. It was in this light that I saw that the wall, a dozen meters in front of me, was fragmented and protruded in a rectangular area just as tall as the creatures I saw. I walked towards the wall on unruly legs. At the same time, I was completely naked. I did not feel it, but now I felt it with the entire surface of my skin. Sensitivity was returning to me. It was getting scary and cold.
Hey, is there anyone here?
Silence. I touched the protruding fragment of the wall with my palms. Under my palms, flashes began to appear in the wall, encased in transparent material. It's like I'm pushing on a liquid crystal display. I pressed harder, but the fragment of the wall did not move away, remained motionless. It seemed to me that this was the entrance to the room. Suddenly, the wall began to lose its hue. It became transparent. I could see through it. At first, I recoiled, but then I touched the wall with my hand. The hand went through it. I took it out and examined it. My hand felt warmer. I put it back in the transparent material and then I stepped in myself. So I found myself in the next room with huge vaults. A thought flashed through my head. This is the hall. Interpretation of mental images. Analytical department.
In the next room, the contactee found a closed chamber with sliding doors. The body of a giant humanoid creature lay between the doors. The body prevented the flaps from closing. The closed chamber was a kind of container into which all the giant humanoid creatures ran. but the body of one of them did not allow the camera to close. In the body pinned down by the flap of the creature, a huge wound is visible in the chest area, pink blood. The creature was attacked from outside, after which it fell into the chamber, preventing closure. There was probably a completely internal attack on their ship. Trying to escape, the creatures ran into the chamber but could not close it. As a result, all the creatures were put to death. The bodies were stacked side by side. There were no attempts to fight for life, no attempts to run out, just dead bodies. The protective clothing is intact, and so are the spheres on their heads. The wound in the chest was observed only in the creature between the flaps. I was scared and uneasy, but I went inside the cell, stepping over a huge 4-meter body. I took a couple of steps right over the body. It was solid. Rigor mortis. Naked. I felt insecure and defenseless. I needed at least some clothes. The first thing that came to mind was to remove the head sphere from one of the creatures.
Interpretation of mental images. Analytical department.
It was quite an ordinary human face with large features. Huge, open, dead eyes. The color was greenish-blue. The skin was pale, deadening. But she was white when she was alive. A sharp, strongly narrowed nose and mouth. The contactee tried to open the creature's mouth by thrusting the fingers of both hands into it, but could not. The only thing that opened my eyes was a row of upper teeth, white. One of the teeth had a purple tinge, probably a prosthesis. Inside the sphere there were various devices, the purpose of which is unknown.
A voice suddenly rang in my head, exactly the same as that of the creature addressing me earlier.
You are one living being. The others are not.
I screamed.
Who's here? Help!
The voice sounded in my head.
Stay where you are. Wait.
Help!
Stay in place. Wait.
In parallel, another voice rang out.
Barely perceptible. Rustling.
The voice of telepathic contact.
Wait, we need information about the alien ship.
It was a huge spaceship or an abandoned alien station. I couldn't tell for sure. I was just walking along an abandoned giant corridor. It seemed that a disaster had recently occurred that claimed the lives of giant aliens overnight. I did not know and could not answer the question of what had happened. Everything seemed absurd, but the feeling of captivity, of being detached from the earth, pressed down like an ice block. The corridor was colossal. The walls were covered with devices I didn't understand and decorated with frescoes depicting various creatures. It is quite possible that these were representatives of the flora and fauna of their home planet. In the bluish light, a huge painting stood out especially. It's like the story of the creation of a world or an entire planetary system. On the smooth wall, interspersed with many dots, was a large sphere, next to which 2 smaller spheres were depicted. It's like a planet and its 2 moons. An association came to mind that this is Mars with its 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos. Intuitively and enthusiastically, I touched the sphere. A blue light hit my eyes, as if I had fallen into a wall, and myriad images swam before my eyes, among which I tried to pick out and comprehend the most vivid ones. There were 4 spaceships approaching the blue planet, orbiting 2 moons, a large one and a small one, and they were truly grandiose, ivory white, streamlined and majestic. Such ships could only belong to a fair intergalactic alien race that sowed life throughout the universe. Such associations arose in my brain at the sight of these ships, but this was just one of the images. The next one showed the same ships, but smashed to pieces, burning, collapsing in space. A black elongated ship was moving past them towards the planet. One of the moons was also destroyed. Its fragments rushed to the surface of the planet. One of the white ships seemed to understand the intentions of the black ship. He was trying to cover one of the moons with his huge body, trying to protect it from destruction with deadly weapons. Apparently, he was trying to protect the planet from falling fragments of the moon. But the white ships were defeated. Suddenly, a column of light crashed down on me from above, right inside this mural. They were mental images. I saw giant humanoid creatures, many I cannot count. They were located in a green valley on the banks of a stream. The valley was surrounded by rocky mountains with black cave mouths, and people came out of the caves to the giant aliens, cavemen, primitive people. It was a paleocontact that happened millions of years ago. In a fragmentary way, I realized that humanity on this planet, and this was undoubtedly Earth, existed even at the time when the continents were united into a single Pangea. And it was then that these giant creatures from white cone-shaped ships chose our planet, or maybe they created life on it. Next, I was pushed out by a wave of fire from the past mental image. Everything was burning. Mountains, valley, rocks. Primitive people and giants. On the clouded horizon, huge boulders fell from the sky to the ground with reflections. Most likely, that destroyed moon. In the blue haze, I saw how the giants were trying to hide people in caves, protect them, and try to save them. Small shuttles, loaded to the brim with primitive people, were flying up to the sky. During takeoff, people fell out of the open hemispheres. The giant pilots cried and screamed, but there was nothing they could do. They were powerless before what happened. I felt a slight bump, and my head rang. I found myself in front of the mural again, in front of the wall with the image. My palm was lying on a convex planet and 2 moons. I pulled my hand away and touched it again, but the images didn't come back. My legs were weak, and I felt weak. I just sat on the floor in a long hallway and tried to come to my senses. Imperceptibly, I fell asleep. I do not know how long I slept, but my body was numb. It was cold. Probably more than a few hours. The mental images tired me out, literally devoured all my energy. I was hungry and thirsty, but I didn't see anything around that could satisfy my hunger and thirst. It was an alien ship which I found myself on somehow. But this ship was destroyed at the very moment when, by a terrible coincidence, I was on it. Fear fought with despair, but it was necessary to move forward. There was a noise in my head, and it seemed as if I could hear some words in the distance, as if the barely perceptible squeak of a radio broadcast, louder and louder, but I couldn't make out the specific words. I put my hand on the wall with frescoes and unknown writings and decided to go ahead, leading my hand through the frescoes. The palm felt the convex images. The next dip in the floor was more natural. I was still walking along the corridor, but the stone or polymer floor began to change. I was walking through the grass of a huge valley. Fresh, clean air was hitting my lungs. I was not used to this and coughed. Under the pre-thunderstorm sky, the gently sloping dome spheres in front of the mountain range could be seen in the distance. I realized that these were mountains from a previous vision, the same ones with caves from which people came to the aliens. Most likely the aliens have built hemispheres of their shelters, dwellings, and laboratories nearby. My gaze seemed to pierce the dome of the hemisphere. I saw a laboratory where giants were conducting experiments on an ape-like creature. Compared to the giants, the creature seemed like a child. The ape man grinned, rushed at the giants, tried to free himself, but was firmly held by some force fields. The creature was fixed on a white panel. Some preparations were being made. And suddenly, rays of light cut through the walls of the room towards the panel, and the ape man, shimmering like a rainbow. Like a mysterious, strange radiation, it enveloped the beast's body, calming it down. The grin was replaced by a calm expression of the muzzle. The look became more meaningful. According to my knowledge and guesses, I realized that this was how the giants created intelligent life on Earth, the first people, by influencing monkeys with some kind of radiation, changing mental functions. Then, apparently, after many generations, the body also changed. The vision disappeared but was immediately replaced by another one. It wasn't a cave, but rather a dungeon. The grotto littered with the half-decomposed corpses of cavemen. I felt a terrible stench clogging my nostrils. I almost threw up, but I restrained myself. The vision was very natural. Perched on a mountain of corpses was an insect-like creature with long mandibles and jagged paws, a bulging segmented belly, and huge yellow eyes. The creature grabbed the corpse and began to tear it apart with its mandibles. In the next vision, I saw the remains of this creature divided and fragmented, with giants in armored suits walking over the remains. My ears were filled with the strong roar of an explosion. Underground grottos, the habitats of predatory insectoids, were filled with raging waves of fire. And then I realized that neither humans nor giants were the first to inhabit our planet. Before us, it belonged to these insect-like creatures. I was walking through the dark corridors of an abandoned alien spaceship. The fear was gone. Gone. It was replaced by feelings of ordinariness, detachment, and a desire to figure out what was going on, to be saved. That's how a person is made. He can get used to everything. I found myself in a difficult situation, almost hopeless. I was doomed, but the hope in my soul did not fade. The corridor was long, huge, with high arches. It did not resemble the corridors of spaceships that I had seen in science fiction films. The creatures controlling them had a sense of taste and beauty. At the entrance to the corridor, a bas-relief suite made of a material that looks like plaster or plastic was installed. It was smooth, glistening in rare flashes of blue light that rose to the ceiling and scattered sparks. These outbursts didn't make me feel dangerous. The infilade depicted a huge humanoid creature in overalls. The creature raised its arms in the air, and above it, constellations, many planets and suns whose names I did not know, reigned in a single ensemble. A grandiose sight, breathtaking. Yes, we are not alone in space. Now that's for sure.
At present, we know for certain that there are many civilizations in the cosmos about which we have no idea. Some civilizations are known to have kind and friendly feelings towards intelligent and thinking beings, but most of them are hostile. Space is like a dark forest or jungle, where any entity that reveals itself must be ready for immediate attack and possibly death. If humanity makes an open address to the cosmic forces, it is unknown how they will react to our message. We need to be cautious and anticipate this situation. Our organization focuses on forecasting and anticipating various possibilities for contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. At present, there is stable telepathic contact with a human aboard the alien spacecrafts. This spaceship is on the moon.
My voice sounded like thunder, echoing through the corners of a giant corridor. There was nothing in the elongated rotunda and the long aisle that could help me. It was necessary to reach the end, to the next crossing. If there are such huge detours here, then what kind of ship is it? Another fact was clear. I was kidnapped here. Why and by whom is unknown. And then a catastrophe occurred that claimed the lives of humanoid creatures that I had recently seen with my own eyes. Huge giants dressed in overalls that completely fit the body, domid on their heads, and quite human faces with green and blue eyes. They did not show hostility, but nevertheless I was fixed on a white panel. I could not move. I was kidnapped and held against my will. And then there was an explosion. I lost consciousness and woke up in an abandoned ship. I've seen their corpses hit by an explosion or some kind of weapon. Maybe the ship survived the attack. The thought made me shudder. What if the attacking creatures are now here on the ship looking for survivors in huge compartments and corridors? Vicious, predatory, aggressive. In fact, I am defenseless. It was also good to somehow get dressed in a piece of material resembling fabric in texture. I found it in the last compartment, managed to tear it off and make something like an ancient Greek toga. It was necessary to move on. Suddenly I felt an acute attack of nausea. My head was buzzing. I sat down against the wall. I can imagine what kind of look I had, in a cloth wrapped around my naked body, the whole household outside. The noise in my head intensified. A sound like gurgling water appeared, from which a voice was formed.
Don't be afraid. I can hear and feel you. You have to go ahead and turn into a side niche.
I whispered, barely able to contain my nausea. Who's here?
Don't ask questions. Do what I say. Help is coming.
An image of a small spaceship that looked like an oblong cylinder began to broadcast into my head. He was racing through space and was clearly extraterrestrial. Most likely, some creatures knew about the crash and rushed to help. Somehow they found out about me, too.
Go ahead.
Overcoming nausea and fatigue, I got up and walked on. I reached the right niche in about an hour. It was difficult to walk. The voice in my head stopped. I stopped every 15 minutes to catch my breath. Nausea rose in my throat in fits, became unbearable, and did not go away. I turned to the left, but I didn't see any niche, a bare wall. Well, where the hell is this?
Shut up. Touch the wall with your hand and order it to open.
I've stopped being surprised by what happened to me. I felt like I was doomed. But the thought of the rescue ship and the voice in my head gave me hope, despite the fact that I felt terrible. I touched the wall with my palm. It was warm to the touch. Open up! The wall has not changed! Open up! A funny thought about the robber's cave and the notorious phrase "Sim Sim open up" flashed through my head. As soon as I thought about it, the wall began to dissolve. I probably really shouldn't have said anything. I should have given a mental command. The floor went out from under my feet and I was pulled inside. It was amazing and scary. I didn't know what I would see inside the room, but what I saw threw me into a stupor. Huge glass prisms filled with a bluish transparent substance were installed on the floor. In the first prism, an unknown beast, vaguely similar to a monkey, froze. Bared long fangs, evil narrowed eyes, black shaggy fur. The creature was as if it were alive, as if it was sleeping in the blue light. But it was dead. I didn't know how many years it had been lying inside the glass trap. Next to it was the next prism. It also depicted an ape-like creature, but less aggressive, tall. Long, outstretched arms almost to the knees. There was fear and meaning in his gaze, a sense of what he had experienced, his mouth stretched out in a scream. My God, they were immersed alive in these prisms, frozen in them, and died under the influence of an unknown substance. God, it's scary. The third prism threw me into a stupor. There was a man and a woman in it, quite earthly, but their skin was white as a sheet of printer paper. Their eyes were wide open. Big eyes are much larger than those of modern people. Long necks, slightly elongated heads. I stared at the woman. Her physique was perfect, well, as for my taste. Rounded hips, full breasts, flat stomach. The man opposite was a little overweight, with a barrel chest and strong arms, large palms. They were also distinguished from people by their faces. They protruded slightly, with their noses only slightly peeking out of their cheekbones. Big mouth, large lips. It sounded in my head.
These are the progenitors of your family. This is a living matrix. We gave it the name Adam Eva.
I whispered. Adam and Eve.
In our language, Adama Eva means those who give birth to reason. These are the first intelligent beings on your planet. The first round of the evolution of thinking beings.
Representatives of official science cannot accurately answer the question of where humanity on planet Earth originated from. But in most intellectual societies, there is the common belief that our civilization was created by extraterrestrial forces during the pre-flood era. A matrix was created, the parent of all living and thinking beings on the planet. These matrices were repeatedly implemented on our planet, but a mistake happened, resulting in the destruction of all genetic species on the planet. This mistake solution was found with the help of a flood, where the most successful beings were preserved. Currently, there are studies and investigations being conducted on this topic.
I rubbed my temples. The voice in my head grew louder.
But this matrix turned out to be imperfect. It was changed. Go to the wall and put your hand on it.
I did everything exactly. Went to the wall opposite the glass prisms and put my hand on it. The impulse was strong. It literally knocked him off his feet, but the wall did not let go of his hand. My fingers burned.
Be patient. Wait.
My head roared. I saw first-hand images in which huge ships hovered over the surface of the desert, over the sands, the silent silence. Then I saw the underwater bases, colossal, mighty. These were alien bases.
This is your planet. I am trying to provide a link between the lost ship and the underwater receptacles on your planet. You'll see for yourself.
Apparently, I was only allowed to see what was allowed. The huge module is rushing through the waves among the raging ocean, the waves of which rose above the skyscrapers. The module was overwhelmed by water, but it steadily emerged from the waves. In a moment, the waves stopped raging, the surface of the ocean smoothed out, became calm. The module rested on a coastal shoal and people came ashore from its belly. No, not people, but these big-mouthed snow-white creatures.
These are the first people of mankind released from an autonomous module. We named it.
The Ark?
In your language, this word sounds exactly like this.
I couldn't believe it. The open gap in the wall suddenly closed. I was trapped. Obeying my fear, I ran to the place where there had been an opening a moment ago.
Wait, don't be afraid. There's instant death in the corridor.
What? How?
Those who attacked our ship are finishing off their lives with directed radiation. It's safe in this room and there's an ion storm outside.
When it's all over, again, the horror and fear that threatens me with death. I sat down on the edge of the glass prism and turned around. An evil monkey was staring at me. Apparently, the first unsuccessful experiments of an extraterrestrial civilization to create intelligence on our planet.
We cannot say exactly how long the telepathic contact will last. It gets weaker with each day, each hour. But this data will be made available for broad research. Which social class needs to know the truth? The truth that extraterrestrial civilizations are contacting humanity, visiting our planet. Conduct experiments. And in some cases, they aid humanity.
Why was I abducted to this space, abandoned, lost ship, wrecked and stuck somewhere on the moon? In order to understand that humanoid six-fingered alien giants dressed in tight jumpsuits and spheres are also mortal? Or in order to know their greatness and the essence of their history? I've already lost track of time. How long have I been here? A day, 2 days, a week? Gradually, exhaustion of the body set in. Attacks of debilitating nausea and headache appeared more and more often. Black flashes appeared in the eyes. I wandered along the endless corridor of a multi-mile ship. It was as if they had deliberately taken me into this corridor and wanted to force me to walk it from beginning to end, studying the bas reliefs on the walls and the spheres covered with images. When you touched the images in your head, it was as if a portal opened. The images penetrated directly into your mind and revealed themselves in all the crushing dynamics and light. The view was again clouded by black flashes that beat inwards and pulsed, blocking the view, blinding. Nausea was added to all this. At that moment, I realized by instinct, felt and was horrified. This is radiation, a very powerful field in which I have been staying for God knows how long. Even if not from the very beginning of the journey, but still there was a feeling and confidence that I was a suicide bomber. I would die here from hunger, exhaustion. But now when I realized that I was surrounded by radiation, a feeling of fear arose. I did not want to die like that from something unnatural. I leaned against a bas-relief wall covered with a snow-white substance or material like our ivory. The image showed to my vision a battle between primitive people and unimaginable monsters, gigantic giants with human bodies and animal heads. Some of the monsters were reptilian hybrids. In a fit of impotence, I leaned on the bas-relief, forgetting that touching any image instantly takes my mind back to those epochs, introducing myself into the whirlpool of events of that time. I saw how a huge modular structure had driven its many-meter-long body into the rocky shore. The structure was burning with a blue squat flame. It seemed to me that this flame does not burn. It is safe. I was inside the vision, but at the same time I was above it, great and huge, as if the creator of all things. Is this the Ark? The voice that had already spoken to me sounded in my head. This was the essence of the ship, its brain, the control matrix in contact with the mental fibers.
In your language, yes. It is the repository of all that exists, alive and correctly created on your planet in the days of the birthright of living, thinking beings.
Then a voice literally screamed in my ear,
"Don't look away!"
I saw how literally through the wall of a huge structure, which is a rectangle divided into huge cells, various living creatures, animals and birds protrude onto the rocky shore. It was a Babylonian festival, a whirlpool of creatures. They obeyed strong psi radiation and walked in an even line, the thickness of which exceeded several hundred meters. Among the living creatures that I had never seen before, and which had nothing to do with modern flora and fauna, there were also humanoid creatures, completely naked, beautifully built, white-skinned. No, not just white-skinned. Their skin was snow-white. Their eyes had a red hue and shone with an inner light, large mouths and little flattened noses. Creatures, humanoid creatures. Or are they still people? The voice was entering his mind again.
This is one of the experiments. These are the people of the planet Vicea. Your scientists call it Phaeton. After the planetary catastrophe, some people were relocated to the third planet of the solar system.
To Earth?
Yes, look.
The next image showed me a picture of a battle in the undergrowth, sandwiched between grandiose, huge rocky spurs. It was a valley pit at the bottom of which the white-skinned sons of an alien planet fought with terrible, gigantic creatures, six-fingered giants, whose animal faces were bared with an angry grin. The monsters attacked in rare waves. There were significantly fewer of them, but they were stronger. They were intimidating in their appearance. Reptilian toothy creatures, apparently devoid of intelligence, rushed forward between them. What was surprising was that white people used some kind of firearms.
The Earth was inhabited by hybrids thousands of years ago. It was an experiment. The strongest race had to win.
I realized that apparently the white-skinned people had won, completely exterminating the giants and reptilian creatures. Their corpses were littered with valleys, ravines, and caves. The white-skinned left corpses in the same places where the giants were killed, and they themselves moved inland, settling into vast territories.
The book of Genesis chapter 6 from verse 1 to 4 tells us, when people began to multiply on earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and took them as wives, whomever they chose. And the Lord God said, I absolutely hate being ignored by family, because they are flesh and blood. Let their days be 120 years, for there were giants on the earth in those days, especially since that time. As the sons of God started coming to the daughters of men, they bore children to them. They are strong and healthy people. This is one of the indirect proofs that the human genome, a certain type of influence was taking place, which was extraterrestrial influence. We cannot prove this empirically or experimentally, but we can rely on indirect evidence.
I did not know which epochs and times affected the images embedded in my mind, but it was clear that all this happened after the biblical flood. Suddenly, I had a choking fit, and I knelt down, holding my throat. I felt the pain that the whites were experiencing. They were suffocating, falling backwards, rolling on the ground, and slowly dying. A gigantic epidemic has engulfed their entire population, and I saw a flat spaceship hovering over a settlement of white-skinned people who had taken refuge in adobe houses. It changed its shape, spread out like water, and formed again into a pancake, and then into a sphere. It was a grandiose sight of something non-existent, obscure and terrible. Terrible in its looming inevitability, size. I was waiting for the sphere to spill over the settlement, but instead it seemed to draw it into itself, covering it for a moment with a silvery, flowing, thick, and seemingly tangible light. A snow-white couple, a well-built man with glowing red eyes and apparently his woman, with a beautiful figure in a loincloth, lay on the table. Automatic installations were working on them, piercing the veins with thin, tubular processes. Something was taken from the body using them. I saw some samples, how the devices affect the brain and spinal cord, ocular nerves. A voice in my head was giving an explanation.
Giants and giants at death exuded a toxin that gets into the soil and water. The creatures were infected. The epidemic turned into a pandemic. We had to invade the genome and improve it. You see before you the first people who underwent modification. This is the very beginning of your human race.
A black flash that covered my vision and burned my eyes pulled me out of the vision. I fell down and lost consciousness.
Noah's appearance is not clearly described in the Bible, but the Book of Enoch and the Apocrypha vividly depicts him with white-red skin, with white hair and light red eyes. Some speculate that Noah might have had albinism or could have been partially Nephilim, considering his unique physical traits. We suspect a powerful force as the Nephilim alien influence on the human genome, which transformed the genetics of humans relocated from the planet Phaeton. That person who exists in our time. Noah's unique physical traits were considered divine and marked his calling to build the ark. We suspect a powerful as the ark. Technological station for transferring genotypes and existing living beings between planets.
Without regaining consciousness, I continued to see. Whether it was a vision or a dream, I did not understand and could not give myself an answer. I was helpless. It might be the last minutes of my life if I couldn't wake up. In the vast sunset sky hidden by clouds, a spaceship hovered, representing a dilapidated closed ring. The ship was grandiose, frozen in the upper atmosphere above the clouds. It was not clear what force was holding him in the air, but it was clear that the ship was destroyed. Perhaps the ship was attacked, and he went closer to the surface of the planet from the far reaches of space, intended to hide, but remained for many decades. Perhaps he voluntarily waited and watched the course of development of intelligent life on Earth. The voice in my head thundered like thunder. It was not a dream, but another vision induced by the thinking powers of the ship in which I was imprisoned.
Look.
Looking down as if I was standing on the edge of a ring ship, I saw a lot of people. Many hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, ordinary people. But among them there were also white-skinned people with red burning eyes. In the crowds and confusion, I even seemed to see several giants enslaved and held in chains. Manually, and with the help of aircraft installations and mechanisms unknown to me, people and giant slaves erected a huge structure. Time accelerated, everything moved with unimaginable speed, and now a huge, grandiose structure reached the lower edge, the surface of the ring ship. people were striving upward. Suddenly, the giant ring began to spin, scattering clumps of flame all over the sky. The sky was burning. With a terrifying roar, the ring turned over, and the center of the structure appeared to be enclosed within its boundaries. A moment later, the entire huge tower building collapsed down, dragging people scurrying in the spiral halls, carrying transparent and yellowish blocks. A catastrophe, an incredible and terrible sight. The tower collapsed, burying all living things under it. People fled in living waves, crushing each other. It was scarier than the military chronicles of thousands of attacks on fortified machine guns and cannons. I could not compare this horror and my fear with anything. The vision was replaced by the following. It seems thousands of years have passed, and mountain ranges have appeared on the site of the wreckage. The voice spoke abruptly.
In your geography, this is the Armenian highlands, the borders of ancient Mesopotamia.
I whispered in delight and horror.
The Tower of Babel, or the Babylonian confounding described in the book of Genesis in our view, is an attempt at initial contact by humankind existing at that epoch, with extraterrestrial forces appearing as a spaceship suspended in the atmosphere at an unreachable height for the technology of that time. The people decided to build a tower and reach this spaceship. Later we found out that people were subjected to powerful induced psychokinetic influence which divided them into groups and languages. No, maybe it also had a psychochemical impact, as in some interpretations of the legend of the Vilonskaya Tower. It tells of certain beings who dispersed a powdery substance inhaled by people.
The abduction to the ship did not go well for me. The feeling, like a memory flashed in my brain, grew to the limit. It seemed that now I would remember everything, but the feeling crumbled, spilled water between my fingers. I was about to grab it, and again failure. The abduction of aliens on a spaceship who died of unknown causes. The plague. It's possible to go crazy. And here I am, walking along the ship in a huge corridor, among the destroyed bas-reliefs on which the history of the creation of our planet, intelligent life on Earth, but also their civilization is depicted schematically, and where and in all colors. The alien civilizations that apparently had a hand in our creation. It was getting harder to breathe, my chest was burning. The pain was unbearable and sharp, then a dull feeling spread between my ribs from left to right and to my legs. Strangely, I no longer felt like eating or sleeping. I just walked forward, running my hand along the wall like an automaton, without a soul or my thoughts. Everything was replaced by the images that the ship itself sent to my brain when touching the wall of bas-reliefs. I didn't understand it right away, but later I realized that this was not a simple wall. It was the chronograph of the universe itself, the history of cosmic intelligence manifested in many civilizations. There were scenes of great triumph, mysterious rebirth, but also images of decadence and decline. Endless wars, famine, genocide, epidemics, all committed by different beings on different planets. It's amazing and unbelievable. The ship I was abducted to recorded everything with a digital mind and embodied it in bas-reliefs. I stopped being surprised, stopped being afraid or admired. Probably that's how the human psyche works, to get used to everything. And I started to get used to it. I knew that soon, one way or another, I would end up from exhaustion, starvation, perhaps because of radiation or God knows what. But even such a prospect did not seem scary to me. The ship was alive. I distinctly heard high-pitched, metal-filled voices in my head, as if the cosmos itself was talking to me.
We won't let you die.
But another voice was also breaking into my consciousness, muffled and quiet, like a distant echo of a familiar world. It was heard.
Explorer, go ahead. We are reading the information.
Incredibly, it was probably telepathic contact with forces unknown to me from my home planet. It gave hope, but at the same time, it awakened despair. No one was going to save me, no one would come to help. They needed me only as eyes, a living perception of what is on this cursed and blessed ship. The road was blocked by a huge monster's head, which grew right out of the smooth wall in a huge sculpture no less than 3-4 meters in height. The creature looked like a shark, but had 2 pairs of eyes and bristle brushes instead of teeth. I touched it with my hand. It could well be that such a creature was found on Earth during the age of extinction. At the touch, images began to flow into me. I became this rabid creature. I was running like a beast, like a frisky lightning at the bottom of leaden waters, but I felt pain. I was pierced by a ray. Consciousness threw me out of the whirlpool of images and immediately plunged into a new pool. A huge bird, or a flying creature with leathery wings all over its body, burst into the water with clawed paws and snatched out a shark, which was also me. From the shore of the greenish ocean, two worm-like organisms watched this scene. They stretched out to the top, then fell off, gathering in rings on a rocky spur cutting into the ocean. Sometimes they intertwined, stretched, tilted slightly, and then gathered like a telescopic tube separately. It was only now that I noticed that at the upper end of the worm-like bodies, where the head could conventionally be, these creatures have two short movable appendages. The appendages vaguely resembled crab claws, studded with many antennae, pimples, or warts. When moving relative to each other, the appendages made a crackling, rustling, and sometimes clicking sound. The creatures were thinking, so they communicated, taking care not only of each other, but also of the reality around them. One of the creatures grated.
Changing the forms of life on our planet is impossible and not relevant. Unfortunately, no one asked us about this. These birds will eat everything out, and we will have to go underground again.
The second creature did not react, but simply stretched out and then fell back in rings. But suddenly it straightened up like a string, became rigid, and fell backwards with a solid stick. It was a gesture of extreme discontent in their civilization. I looked at all this through the eyes of a shark, which was being carried away by a huge bird into the sky. My ribs hurt a lot, and my heart burned. In my head, as if from the back of my head, the voice of the ship sounded in an insinuating whisper.
People of your order have never seen and will never see this. This is the very center of the universe. 2 billion years ago.
Over time, there was a strong feeling that this ship had access to some kind of global, all-dimensional network, not limited by anything. New fields, new ways of transmitting information directly by mental images into the mind of a reading being. That creature was me. I crouched down to catch my breath after crawling under the huge shark's head. I used to be able to walk for several hours as long as I needed to rest. I could barely walk now. It hurt to breathe. He recovered every 5 minutes, squatting first and then leaning back against the gigantic wall. It was getting harder and harder to get up. In fact, I no longer knew where I was going. Why? What was waiting for me ahead? Simple curiosity? Stubbornness? Everything ended unexpectedly. And I can't explain what exactly. 4.5 million years ago, amidst the primordial blackness of cosmic chaos, a huge, colossally huge creation station materialized from a cloud of light pierced by black petals and sparkling into space, the material part of what humanity will later call God. The station exceeded the size of the future solar system by many hundreds of times, namely the future system, since the station of creation is the ruler of galaxies, a fighter against the entropy of the cosmos. The beings who created it are beyond comprehension. I've seen photon discharges fly out in flashes the size of uranium from the place where the gas and dust cloud accumulates. The creation station was thickening the clouds, affecting them with gravity. Space was distorted and bent. The station itself was projected in various dimensions, being simultaneously in the visible and invisible spectrum of space. It's the most great thing I've ever seen in my life. Flashes of light and darkness hit my eyes, and the sun appeared from a suddenly manifested opened black hole, dotted with electric yellow lightning as if yellow from an eggshell. It was no bigger than a football, but its radiance was blinding. The plasma was held by the most powerful gravitational fields. Gradually, the creation station began to dissolve in space, disappearing, passing from one spectrum to another, and the sun almost immediately increased in size. I was horrified and screamed. It hurt me. The ribs and under the ribs were burning with fire. I realized that I was dying. I could fly between the stars, take planets in my hands, and play with whole constellations like beads. I was the boundless space itself, and in this space my mind raced like a golden ray. I saw hundreds of thousands of inhabited planets. I saw beautiful and terrible creatures. I understood and felt life, not only in myself alone, but in all-encompassing forces. I ran across the endless ocean, not drowning in it, but rising above the waves. I ran to the edge and saw the radiance of the firstborn stars. It was then that I saw them, the first people of a planet unknown to me. I screamed, but the scream turned out to be a silent void, and then I heard a voice.
You were kidnapped by us in order to become a creator. We needed your soul, revealed in the knowledge of creation. It was we who led you from image to image and did not let you escape. But salvation was near. It was enough for you to express your desire to return to Earth, but you did not express it.
I didn't feel like it. I could see everything at once. I saw time, its thin and uncertain streams accelerating and pulsating. I saw how life was distributed through the corners of space, which seemed to me just a big apartment building. I died, but now I have become a creator. I am endowed with a power that scares me. And my friend, I heard again the voice that I had been mistaking for the voice of the ship all this time, but it turned out that this was not the case.
You are the creator. You are the soul. And I am the matrix of creation. I am the creator of everything that exists, and I need a soul.
I couldn't call myself a simple me. Now I wanted to think we, not someone tangible or known to me. I felt myself in everything. In every person, in a newborn baby's cry, in the crying of an abandoned woman or in the barking of a dog, in the subtlest, barely perceptible flight of a butterfly, or in fluttering hummingbirds. I was life itself.
Do you want to know who was the soul before you?
I didn't answer anything. I just saw it. The creation station appeared again. A bluish sun crept out of its womb, and I realized that this was no longer the solar system I had known in human life. I saw the station, still the same, dimensionless, creative, but in the invisible spectrum a being manifested, which is a soul. Everything that I saw happened millions, hundreds of millions of years ago. The soul of the matrix of creation was a tall being woven as if from a multitude of solid greenish covers, a toad-like shape, a swollen torso, and it could think. Suddenly it hit me. It was as if I began to manifest myself again into something complete. I could not see the colors. Everything turned yellow-green. I looked at myself, at my chitinous integuments.
The soul exists outside the body. Souls existed even before the Big Bang, which gave rise to the cosmic abyss. This is the first thinking energy form, and we gave it a body, changing bodies for one soul in an endless stream of birth and deaths.
By commanding the matrix as part of its control, I caused the blue sun to roll out of the belly of the huge machine and manifest in its true size. I didn't know what I was doing or how, but I was doing everything right, as if I were shaping planets with my hands, sculpting them out of gas and clouds of dust, placing them in a habitable and beyond sector. I died and was born again, one of the people from planet Earth. I see you now, I'm watching, I'm getting ready and waiting. With you, Strange. This data was obtained from a classified server of the contact group of the special unit of the US Secret Service for near and far space exploration. The data is being updated, but it is already quite clear that the forces that we have learned about are beyond our control. For them, we are reasonable dust. If you think that this is not proof of the existence of aliens, then you are right. There is much more evidence, and on our channel we will reveal all the secrets and evidence of their presence. Subscribe to the channel and send me your stories related to aliens by email. You will find contacts in the About the Channel section. Together, we will force the authorities of all countries to disclose all the information they have. After all, people should know the truth.